Alrighty, well, those of you out in the world of the internet, I'm Mike, the Pole Barn Guru, and today I've got Chris Brown from Culpepper Wood Treating, and we're going to have a good time today. Of course, we have a good time every day. So, Chris, why don't you give me first a little background upon yourself and how you got to be with Culpepper?
And thanks for having me today. Yeah, we'll have a good time just having a discussion. But yeah, my name is Chris Brown with Culpepper Wood Preservers. I am the Director of Business Development and also Marketing. Been with Culpepper almost 2 years now. Been in the industry about 18 years, so I don't know that I know it all, but I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. I just really was impressed with what Culpepper was doing and had many conversations with them and finally decided to make the transition over, and everything is going great. Great company, started in 1976 by Mr. Joe Daniel. In 1976, it was just a single location in Culpepper, Virginia. Now we're up to 11 treating plants and one manufacturing facility, so 12 plants total. Mainly covering mainly in the Northeast, Southeast, and Midwest.
Well, that's some pretty awesome growth. I actually, although I didn't stop there, I actually have driven past the original plant in Culpeper, Virginia.
Okay, well, good.
So I know where it's at, so were you in the treating industry before you came to Culpeper?
I was, yes, sir.
Okay. So because lots of our viewers and listeners are not really familiar with the pressure preservative treating process, maybe you can help walk some of them through what happens to a raw, untreated piece of lumber when it arrives at one of your facilities, and just take us through until it leaves the door going out to the real world.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, most people don't get a behind the scenes look as to what we actually do. They just know that it's treated wood and they go from there. So, we have a purchasing department who is going to procure the southern yellow pine from the mills, mainly in the South. Because that's where southern yellow pine is. So we buy that, and we'll either receive those either by rail car or by truck. And then once they get to our facility, everything is in mill packs. So we will take those to what we call the breakdown facility, and we'll break those down into our standard pack sizes. Once that happens, we actually use color codes for the grade, the color of bands and the color of end tags that will specify the grade and the treatment that unit will be. Once we have that taken care of, then we kind of set it to the side and we build what's called charges. And a charge is a full cylinder of treatment, meaning, if it's a 100-foot tube cylinder, we're going to maximize the space in that cylinder for that treatment. So that's called a charge. And depending on what retention this lumber will be at, whether it's 0.06, 0.15, 0.23, that kind of determines how long it's in the cylinder. So, for example, a charge of 0.15 ground contact dimension or timbers, that's going to roughly take about an hour. Pressure is applied, vacuums are pulled to kind of force the preservative into the wood. And then a final vacuum is pulled to remove any excess chemical. And then it's taken out of there and placed on a drip pad. The drip pad is just for runoff of chemical. And it kind of goes back into a basin so we can recycle that chemical just for cost savings. So we can recycle and reuse that. Lumber is typically going to sit on a drip pad for 24 to 48 hours, and where then it's moved to our inventory yard and ready to be shipped to the customer. So that's kind of a quick rundown of the treatment process. I'm sure you may have more questions.
Well, but you do have an advantage in that you are treating southern yellow pine, which southern pine treats extremely well. I like to explain to people that it treats kind of like a sponge.
Sure.
It really likes chemicals as opposed to the pressure treaters in the western United States that are treating primarily western hem fir, where our viewers in the West are used to seeing treated lumber that has, I explain to people, looks like somebody walked over the wood with golf cleats.
That's right.
It's
Yeah, they have to
incised.
incise it.
Yeah. So maybe you can explain quickly some of the differences in just the wood quality that allows southern pine to be treated without having to be incised as opposed to your western species.
Well, I mean, the growth rings have a lot to do with it, and then we can also get into the heartwood. The heartwood is kind of the you run into that with southern pine, but most of the dimension lumber, most of what we treat, it's a soft wood, and like you said, it's almost like a sponge. So when that vacuum is pulled in that cylinder, it takes the chemical, and the chemical penetrates that piece of wood throughout. When that wood comes out, we do testing on it. We do a core test. So a lot of people have the misconception that it's just the perimeter is treated, but with southern yellow pine, we don't have to incise it, and we're able to force the preservative throughout that piece of wood.
Now, yeah, but in the treating. I've been personally through several different treating plants in the West, so it is a fascinating process from the aspect of just a casual individual being able to look at what's happening with it, and modern pressure treating technology is really pretty amazing. I mean, it's very efficient. Like you talked about, taking core samples to verify that the level of pressure treating that is expected is actually happening. And I don't know how so much in the East is done, but I know in the West they basically just kill it. I mean, somebody in the days where everything was CCA pretty much, and for in-ground it was a retention of 0.6 per cubic foot. The assays had come back at 0.75, 0.8, 0.85 because it's cheaper to throw more chemical at it than it is to have to run it through the retort again.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, everything that we do now, for the most part, is computerized, and all of our computer systems are tied in with Copper's Performance Chemicals. That's who our chemical supplier is, and so everything is pretty exact. Where if it's supposed to be a 0.06 or 0.15, that's the minimum retention level. That's not the high end. Some people I've heard in the field will say, well, this is probably more like a 0.13 instead of a 0.15, and that's just not the case. 0.15 is minimum. So we're trying to dial it in as close as we can due to the cost of chemical, but we're always we're going to come in around closer to a 0.16 because, like you said, we don't want to have to run it back through. It is cheaper to, I guess, overshoot the minimum retention levels than it is to have to retreat something.
Right. Well, and just besides that if you have to retreat it, it slows down everything behind it too.
So, yeah, and in 2020, we didn't have time to be retreating lumber. I mean, it needed to. It was in high demand, so yeah, that minimum retention was not in play. It's more like a 0.16 or and so something to touch on is these computer systems. Everyone says, well, computer systems, they may mess up. Well, I mean, we go through weekly testing where we're sending samples to our chemical company, and they're making sure that their readings are in line with ours, so that our computer systems are always working properly.
Now, it's quite a science. Um, so, as far as Culpepper and wood that would be used like for columns for post frame buildings, so you're talking timbers, 6x6 and larger. What types of treatment chemicals are you generally using for those?
Well, it depends on what the intended use is. But for the most part, all 4x6 and 6x6 are going to be treated 0.15 UC4A, 0.23 UC4B, and then with some of our poles and pilings for saltwater use, those are CCA. But for the MCA product, which is the residential chemical that we use, it would be 0.15 or 0.23.
Okay, and that 0.23, like I believe that you said it's UC4B, which would be what I would call structural in-ground use.
Sure, yeah. It's not ground contact, it's in-ground use.
Right. Do you find some confusion in, I find confusion in labeling because both UC4A and UC4B, the tags both say ground contact.
Correct. Yeah, there's been confusion, and I'm sure there will be ongoing confusion. I don't know where the solution lies, because we sell quite a large amount of 0.23, because UC4B is up to code
Right.
for posts that are in the ground. But you still see a lot of retailers who are, I guess, educating their customers that 0.15 is sufficient because it's ground contact. And really there is quite a bit of confusion in the field as to which retention they should be using.
And we run into that all the time.
I'm sure you do, yeah.
So, and I mean, we provide the pole building kits for the Home Depots in the United States, and
Okay.
when people walk into a big box store, whether it's Home Depot or Lowe's, and they see a pressure preservative treated 4x6 or 6x6, and it looks treated to them, and that label says ground contact, but in all likelihood, if you're going to a big box store, it's only UC4A treatment, which it's like I say, it's ground contact. If you want to lay it on the ground, it's probably going to be just fine and do everything you need it to be. But a lot of that lumber ends up being used, planted in the ground for things that it shouldn't be used for, at least in my humble opinion.
Yeah, in my opinion, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And it causes some frustration, and when that material gets used incorrectly and then decays prematurely, everybody's waving the flag at pressure treated lumber shouldn't be in the ground.
Well, what I hear more than anything is, well, this new treatment just isn't as good as CCA.
I hear that story too.
I hear it all the time, and I'm telling and no matter what, I don't know if they don't believe me, but I'm sitting there going, no, this is a great treatment, but there's different levels of retention, designated by the AWPA as to the intended use, and you have to make sure you're using that retention level for that intended use. If there's failure, it's not because of the treatment. It's because it's used improperly by the end user.
I hear you. we're preaching the same message here. I hear it all the time, and weirdly enough, the places that it seems to be most difficult to get UC4B lumber is in what I would call the deep south.
Sure.
yeah, so many of the lumber retailers, so we're out of the big boxes and we're talking the lumber yards, they're inventorying UC4A, and the story I hear from them is, well, that's what everybody uses.
We hear
That
it
doesn't make
also.
doesn't make it right.
It does not make it right. A lot of these retailers I get, and if the guy down the road is stocking UC4A and he's competing on price, and the customer sees a 4x6 at one place and a 4x6 at another place, and one is going to be higher priced, I understand the mentality behind it, but like you said, that doesn't make it right.
Yeah. And I don't think probably you and I are going to cure the problem today
We're not.
Because they don't put you and me in charge.
No, and it's how many times have you heard, well, I just wish that everything was still CCA?
I've heard that happen a few times, and frankly, but CCA was and is a great chemical, and I just baffled the daylights out of me when it came out that, hey, everything's not going to be CCA anymore, and CCA really wasn't harming anybody to begin with, but it's just,
Now, have you ever heard the fact that there was more arsenic in toothpaste than there was in CCA treated wood?
Oh, I would believe it. I mean, you would have to, you'd have to have a child ingest a truckload of CCA treated lumber to ever have it affect them. But we're past that. So
we are past that, and and at one point when the transition happened, I was probably on the CCA side. That's before I really knew everything about this new treatment, whether it was copper azole, ACQ, MCA. But our MCA product, this new product that everyone has, it is a great product. You can use it practically anywhere. You can paint or stain it. You can make it any color of wood that you want. So instead of the dark green color CCA, I kind of prefer the MCA product right now. It's very user friendly.
Yeah, and I have used MCA treated wood myself, and I am thoroughly confident in it personally. So we've got the pushback from the people that say, well, regardless of how much you treat or what you treat it with, that it's not going to last in the ground. Now, of course, my response to those people is always, well, okay, show me your peer-reviewed study that shows that properly pressure preservative treated wood in the ground is going to decay prematurely. And nobody's got that.
Yeah, you said something though right there. You said properly preserved.
Yes.
And that's huge, because I don't care what treater you're using. There's a few things you want to make sure of. Number one is that they are being third party inspected, because whether it's with SPIB, TPI, whatever, you want to make sure that you're using a third party inspection agency. That just kind of verifies that the treating company is on the up and up, and that they're doing what they say they are doing. Like I said, we go through 3 testings, and that's on site by our own staff. We're mailing samples into our chemical company, and then we're being tested on site by SPIB. So properly preserved is the key word.
Yeah, and and I know the flip side is there are studies that are done and peer-reviewed that have been ongoing for decades on treated lumber to levels, for the most part, less than what we're seeing for a UC4B treated piece of wood, and the wood's not decaying. So, and I mean, they're doing these tests in some ugly places. If I'm not mistaken, I think USDA's got some plot in Mississippi in basically a swamp that if wood's going to decay, that should be where it's happening, and they're just not having these decay issues.
No, I mean it's usually it's not the wood. Now every tree is different. I'm not going to say that there aren't characteristics of wood that make it tough on some pieces. We don't see that much. I mean, because like I said, we're treating and testing after every charge, but most of the time it happens at the end use if there's any issues, whether it be by wrong treatment they bought or faulty construction.
No, so and this is one that I've heard, people that I question, their thought processes, but that supposedly treated wood in contact with concrete or cement, that the concrete is going to cause premature decay of properly pressure treated wood. And
that blows my mind, because the same person will say, you need to use gravel. Well, that's gravel and concrete are kind of the same material. It's the concrete is not making the pressure treated wood fail. Not no way, no how, never.
Yeah, and once again, my response to those people is, okay, go open up your code book and tell me what the code says about wood in contact with concrete. It says it must be pressure preservative treated, or a decay resistant species. But for the most part, it's pressure treated wood, and it tells you what the requirements are. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're a lot smarter than me. So if they say it's okay, I'm going to believe them.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's lots of engineers and scientists that have spent a whole lot more years than you and I have been around lumber, that can verify that yes, indeed, the products that are being used, when they're used appropriately, that they're safe to use, and that they're going to last longer than any of us are going to be around to prove otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So then there's the folks that they want to take your properly treated piece of UC4B lumber, and they want to do things like, oh, let's dump used motor oil on it, or let's coat it with tar. Yeah, I know, I shake my head too. Let's coat it with tar.
I field those questions all the time. Okay, once I get it, what do I need to do to it? Nothing. Well, don't I need to put a barrier on it? No, it's treated for that use. Excuse me. I mean, it's not like we're just going to half step it and say, all right, now when you get it, here's all the steps you have to take to make it, okay to be put in the ground. No, that's why those end tags are on there. That's why there's different retention levels. It's for different uses. I mean, it's just do a little research, and you'll figure out if it's okay to use or not. You sure don't have to put tar or motor oil on it.
Yeah, all you're doing when you do that is you're likely to contaminate the groundwater.
Yeah,
especially the motor oil people. I mean, it kind of reminds me of when I was first in this industry 40 years ago, and there were lumber yards that catered to builders, and they were using pentachlorophenol treated lumber, which you've got an oil-based treatment, and you stand it up. Well, oil is affected by gravity, and gravity it wants to suck that oil and its treating qualities out the bottom of that piece of wood. And when your treatment gets thin enough at ground level or close to ground level, then you start to see decay problems. That's the beauty of MCA or similar products, is that it's part of the wood. It's not going to disappear. Gravity is not going to affect it.
That's exactly right. The one thing that we recommend, I mean, it's not a required, but the one thing we recommend is in-cut solution. Anytime you're out in the field making a cut, use some in-cut solution. We do recommend that. But the MCA treatment is not going to run off that piece of wood. It's not going to deteriorate over time. I mean, it is, like you said it perfectly. It is part of that piece of wood. That treatment is part of that piece of wood now.
Yeah, I hear you entirely, and of course, then in our industry, we've got people selling post protectors, which are basically a recycled plastic sleeve that fits over a piece of wood, and people go, well, they ask me all the time, well, what do you think of these? And my response to them is, if it makes you feel better,
right,
then by all means, because it's not going to hurt our treated piece of wood. But did they need it? No, they didn't need it.
I hear the same thing. We can go to these trade shows, and there may be a booth over here selling a sleeve, or a booth over here selling a wrap, and customers will say, well, same thing. What do you think about those? If it makes you feel better, if it makes you sleep better at night, go for it. As long, but that piece of treated wood is fine by itself, standing alone. The UC4B, put it in the ground, you'll have no issues with it. It's treated for that use.
Yeah, well, and I tell people, I live in a post frame home. I've got a home that's got 8,000 finished square feet, and I have columns embedded in the ground that are UC4B treated, and no, I wasn't worried about putting concrete around them. I didn't put sleeves on them. I didn't coat them with oil or tar or wrap them with anything special. And I've got $1 million invested in my house. And if I didn't feel totally confident in that product in the ground, I would have done something differently. But the reality is, yes, I do feel totally confident in the product. And there's millions and millions of board feet of, once again, properly pressure preservative treated UC4B wood that go into the ground every year. And if those columns were failing due to premature decay, we would have A, heard about it, and B, we would be doing something differently. And so would you. I mean, it wouldn't behoove your organization to be putting something out to the public that was going to prematurely decay. Obviously.
No, obviously, it's, if you go that route, and I'm sure there are some that do. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But if you go that route, you're going to be fielding questions every single day about claims, problems, issues. That's no fun. We don't really want those phone calls, so we try to do it, right the first time. We're not seeing any failures for properly pressure treated wood. We don't see failures for that.
No, I'm sure you don't. I personally have been involved in probably 20,000 buildings of my own over 40 years' time. And I've never had anybody email me or call me or contact me in any way to tell me that they had a UC4B column rot. It's never happened. Zero.
No,
And
we haven't had any, and we don't anticipate having any. Um, there's a lot of chemical in there. It's okay. I mean, it's good. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think that I think you guys do a wonderful job. So, do you see anything new or exciting happening in the pressure treating industry, or do we have it to a point where we're pretty comfortable that we're state of the art as far as the given knowledge that we have in hand today?
I think there are some not issues, but there's still some things that we keep an eye on. I mean, number one, a couple years ago, AWPA kind of revised their standards, especially for some of the dimension lumber for above ground and ground contact use. So I think that has been that caught on well from the get go, but there's still people getting used to that. And trying to convince them to stock all ground contact, which is what we recommend, it's starting to grasp, I guess, and take a stronger hold across not just the Northeast, but across the Midwest, even across the Southeast and the South. Beyond that, I think we're at a pretty good place. I don't see much happening. There's not going to be any new treatments coming out, because what we're using now is very good, and we're not seeing any failures. We're not seeing any issues. And so we're at a pretty good place as far as what chemical we're using. I don't really see anything new and exciting coming through the pipeline right now.
Well, that tells me that you've gotten to a good point. I'm impressed by the ability to do computerized monitoring of your product during the processes. Because it has been, for me, it's been over 20 years since I've been in a treatment plant, and so.
Well, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you out, because there are still some non-computerized treating plants out there, and I have been to those, and what you see now it's state of the art. I mean, it is absolute state of the art. There's someone sitting there watching that computer for that whole charge, making sure that the pressure is correct, making sure that the vacuum's pulling correctly, and not only are they watching it, but these chemical companies, they're watching it as well, monitoring to make sure that, like I said, everything is accurate.
Yeah, well, and from the chemical company's standpoint too, that they want to make sure that their product is being properly used, because they don't want to go through although it wouldn't be probably health issues that killed the CCA, but just the liability issues from product failures. So I'm sure they probably keep a pretty tight rope under the people that are using their products.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, their name is out there with it. So yeah, they want to make sure that whoever's using their chemical is doing it, the way they're supposed to, doing it properly, and making sure that when the product leaves the yard, it is treated according to, that end tag on that stick.
Yeah. So, and I guess I'm kind of skipping around as things come through my head. So, so I'm assuming that, okay, a truckload of 6x6s comes into one of your treatment plants. Generally, I'm guessing that when it arrives, it is probably not dry. Guessing it has a significant moisture content.
What, when we get it from the mill, or when we
Yes.
ship it out?
Yeah, when you get it from the mill. So
well, it's all HT stamped. It has been in a kiln. It is heat treated. So yeah, it's pretty dry when we get it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm used to. I came from the Pacific Northwest, so
I got you. Yeah, all the southern pine we get, it has been in a kiln.
Okay.
So it's ready to roll, and it usually more and more these days, especially with this new treatment, something to keep in mind is, when you were treating with CCA, you could cover up, I guess, any dirt. or road grime that you might get as a during transport from the mill to your facility. With the new treatment, I mean, pretty much everything you're receiving is tarped coming from the mill. Even the rail cars are tarped, because you want that wood clean and dry. So it's tarped. There's no rainwater hitting it. There's no road film hitting it. So when that lumber hits our yard, it's ready to be treated.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great for you and your locations. Yeah, because the most recent plant that I was in British Columbia, and they're getting green hemlock timbers.
Oh yeah.
That I mean, they're just saturated with water when they're coming in, and so they're having to suck all the moisture out in order to put the chemical in. So
Yeah.
they're losing time there, and of course then they lose the time in the handling of having to incise all the products too. So Southern Pine doesn't have those same challenges. So that's great for where you are.
It does, and we try to turn and burn as quick as we can. That way, we don't have any mold issues. Yes, there is a moldicide in the chemical treatment that we use, but you don't want untreated lumber sitting in the weather, the elements, very long. I mean, our goal is to treat it and have it ready for the customer, not sitting untreated.
Yeah, well, and then that's what makes money is get it
That's what
in.
makes the money. That's right. It's you got to get it treated and ready to sell.
And so, have you as an organization have had many issues with inability to get wood in to be able to treat it over the last year? I know there's been some real supply chain issues down the end with people saying, well, my lumber yard can't get me a pressure treated 20-foot 6x6.
So we've kind of been in. This is about the fourth stage over the last year. So if you go back a year from now, and I'll give you a quick rundown of. I'm sure you've heard it, but I'll give you our quick rundown. So COVID hit, we started hearing about that, and then everyone kind of said, "Well, this year's shot. We're not going to be doing anything with everyone in quarantine." So the mills started cutting production. Treaters started scaling back inventory. Just that's a lot of dollars invested when you have no clue if you're going to sell it or not. And so everyone just kind of cut back, and then the doors swung open 1,000%. And since everyone was at home in quarantine, what do they want to do? Well, let's work on the house. I can't go anywhere else. And so, the big box it started there at the big box. Their demand just went through the roof immediately. While you're still dealing with COVID all year, in various ways. And so mills couldn't catch up, treaters couldn't catch up, and the retailers suffered because the demand was sometimes triple what it had been, and they just couldn't get enough wood. It recovered in the fall as far as availability. It kind of recovered, but then everyone came back in right before the new year and panic buyed, thinking we got to get it now. We can't be in the same situation in 2021. So everyone was buying wood in these 1st of December, and then it kind of recovered again 1st of February. Where we are today, the availability isn't too bad at the mill level. Mills are doing a great job. The problem we're running into right now is trucking.
Yeah.
And in 2018, there was a trucking issue when all the ELDs came out and driver shortages. We see that right now. We're not sure why. It could be a number of reasons, and we all have our different theories. But there is a trucking issue right now, and so if the retailer isn't getting it, it's not so much because of the wood this year. It's just the delivery and the transportation. It's taken a little longer.
Yeah. One other thing that has just come to mind too, with so many things, seemingly endless list of things that are going up in price. How is the price of treating chemicals? Is it fairly stable? What can we look into our crystal ball and see as far as stability in the price of what you can control?
Well, copper was sky high last year. I mean, copper went through the roof, just like everything else did. Fortunately for us and our customers, we kind of locked in our rate, and that's kind of how copper is bought and allocated based on how far you'll lock it in. So we were pretty good. I mean, we think middle of this year, we'll have to look at cost again, but just like everything else, I mean, fuel's rising, copper's rising, chemicals rising, transportation's rising, driver pay is rising. I mean, I don't care what you look at, it seems like everything is on the up right now. I will say that I think lumber is high right now, as we all know. I think we'll see a recovery, probably about third quarter of this year. You'll see it's just going to be a roller coaster all year for lumber prices.
Yeah, well, and my recent guest was Russ Vaughan from Vaughan Timbers, and so we were talking some of the lumber pricing thing there too, and yes, it's high now, and where our eventual new normal is going to be at is probably not going to be where the old normal was at.
That's right. That's right.
It's one of those things, and I encourage people that if you have a need, do it. It's especially right now where you can borrow money so cheaply.
Yeah, that's been a big factor in it when you start looking at interest rates and how many people are looking to get into houses, and people can borrow money a lot cheaper. I mean, yeah, that all plays into this. This is not all COVID related. There's a number of factors.
Yeah.
But I will say, yeah, I agree with you. If you have something to do it. Money's cheap right now, and if you can get it while you can. Because that seems to be the name of the game right now. If you can get it, get it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate that you and I have the same viewpoints on things, which I didn't expect to have you slap me down on something, which you would have been welcome to. I wouldn't have any issues with that. But no, it's been fascinating. I'm sure that we'll have plenty of people that'll be watching and listening to our discussions here today. And I just want to say thank you to you and your team for doing what I think is an outstanding job for the lumber products industry in America on the whole.
Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate everything you do. I appreciate that you're sharing factual information. And our company is proud of what we do, and as long as our customers are happy, then that's what keeps us going every day.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much again, and hey, have a great rest of your week.
Hey, you too. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, you take care.